Okay, so without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce Mark Bell from the Scottish Government. So Mark Bell is a statistician at the Justice Analytical Services at the Scottish Government. He leads the team in charge of the Scottish Crime and Justice Survey. And over the last 10 years, he's been working on a lot of different projects involving research, indeed, on Scottish justice system and official statistics. So, Mark, the floor is yours.
Nice. Thank you very much, and good morning, everyone. So today we're just going to give a bit of an update on the SCJS. So I'll give a little bit of background to the survey, but for those of you who were either here last year or have seen us speak at some other user events online, most of this will be quite familiar to you. And now I'm going to talk more about developments in the survey and our plans for how we're going to produce the data going forward, and some updates to the questionnaire and some other bits and bobs. So what's the Crime Justice Survey? Well, most of it's been covered expertly by Susan this morning, and it's very similar obviously to the Crime Survey for England and Wales. We've had surveys in Scotland for a long time, and the SCJS as it currently, in its current form, has existed since about 2008. We're a household survey. We interview around 6,000 people a year in private households all across Scotland. Don't speak to children. We don't speak to those in group residences, student halls, that kind of thing, or other institutions without an address. We're not a commercial victimisation survey, so we don't speak to businesses. In terms of the kind of areas that are covered by the survey, since the survey in its current form came into existence, we've asked people about their experiences of violent and property crime, but more recently we've included fraud and computer misuse, and this has been in the England and Wales survey for a number of years now, and our first findings from that will be due out this year, and that went into the survey from 23-24 onwards. And in addition to that, we also ask certain questions around public perceptions of crime, police, and other parts of the Scottish criminal justice system. So in terms of our timeline of publications we've had out recently, our most recent publication was the 21-22 findings. That was published in November 2023, and that was our first post-COVID survey. And as a result of us doing it once we could get back into people's houses, the fieldwork was conducted a little bit later in the year. Typically, we're a kind of April to March survey sweep, but this one was conducted between November and December 21 to 22. But since then, we're getting back into our more annual typical release schedule. So the 23-24 survey findings are the ones that we're going to publish, hopefully, in the first half of this year. And then we're just finishing up the fieldwork for the 24-25 sweep, which will be out a year from now-ish. So in terms of the kind of latest findings, as I say, Susan's covered most of this, but overall crime, as measured by the survey, has seen quite a large fall. Since around 2008-9, around about 53% decrease in volume, and as was discussed earlier, a similar decrease in the victimisation rate, down to about 10%, 1 in 10 adults experiencing crime 21-22. And as we've seen, victimisation rate is not equally dispersed across the population, so it's likely to be higher for younger people, disabled people, and those living in urban and deprived areas. In terms of the types of crime we see in Scotland, around 3/4 of that is property crime, with about 27% violent crime in the latest figures. And you can see from the pie charts on the right, in terms of violent crime, most of violent crime is kind of minor assault, and most of that is minor assault with no or negligible injury, with the more serious types of violent crime making up a smaller proportion of that. Whereas property crime has a little bit more variation in it. There's a lot more vandalism, and other household theft make up, a little over a third each of total property crime. So that's a bit of a quick whiz through. Obviously, if anyone has more questions or wants to talk about it more, I can, but like I say, I'd rather focus a bit more about where we're going. So this year, as I say, will be the first of us getting back into more of a regular annual cycle with the survey. So we're working currently on the publication for the 23-24 findings. As I said, the next report is going to include for the first time our findings from our new fraud and computer misuse module. This replaces what we previously had as a cybercrime part of the questionnaire, but that was not embedded in our victim form, so we were never previously able to say anything about volumes of cybercrime, whereas we will be able to say more about the incidences of victimisation and volume estimates for fraud and computer misuse in Scotland for the first time. And also we've been working alongside our colleagues in the CSEW team, whose questionnaire we have effectively nicked. And they've been very, very gracious with help to help us ensure that the data quality of that is as good as it can be. So we're really, really looking forward to getting out there. Along with that, we also did a lot of work improving our self-completion part of the survey. So there's a lot of work done to widen that in terms of asking more questions around controlling behavior when it comes to partner abuse and sexual assault. But these findings we combine over 2 years before we publish them. So the 23-24 survey findings will be combined with the 24-25 survey, which is currently in the field or nearly completed. And so we're expecting to publish that next year as the first of that new set of findings from the self-completion modules. It's also important to note that we're probably starting like a new time series with these because we've overhauled them quite a lot, but it will provide much better data on this area of these serious areas of our survey. The other bit of what we've been focusing on recently is trying to improve how we get the information out there. Typically, we've always put out everything in one big report, which is quite lengthy. The last report was around 200 pages, and it usually takes us about a year from the end of the survey, finishing fieldwork in, say, March, April time, to us being able to publish somewhere between April, May, or just before summer, which is a long time. It's a lot, we're trying to get data out more timely and trying to get information out to users as effectively as possible. So we've been considering methods in which we can maybe try to do this a little bit faster. So we've not finished our plans yet, but as soon as we do, we'll obviously announce the plans through our usual ScotStat network in terms of what we're going to do. At the moment, we're considering a couple of different plans for this year and then for the future. This year, we're considering splitting the findings into 2 reports. So the first report will be effectively our victimization side of the survey, crime volumes, victimization rates, and the demographics of people experiencing crime. And the second volume will include perceptions of crime, so the sort of attitudinal side of the survey. As I say, we'll put those plans out once we have them, but there's not really an expectation these reports will go out very far apart. We're just trying to find a way to speed things up a little bit, not least because the development of the fraud data and the fraud module has taken a lot of resource in the last year, and it's just would have meant otherwise data would be produced a little bit later. We're also considering any other ways of potentially getting the information out earlier, such as putting out an initial high-level findings paper that would probably come out before, say, the end of the year, maybe 6-7 months after the end of fieldwork, with the full report going out later. But we're just considering any ways that we can make this more effective, essentially, and also working to reduce the size of the report, which is one of the larger reasons for why it takes us such a long time to put it out. We do have a current Shiny app, which hasn't been updated in a number of years. That was designed to put out biannual data at police division level for key measures, but I would be keen to improve this so we can put out more data in such a way that it makes it easier for people to interrogate. The data sets that we put out are excellent and they're extensive, but they're not exactly easy for people to navigate, especially if you're keen to compare trends over time. Whereas our Shiny app might be a way for us to put the data out in a way that would allow, I guess, non-academic users especially to be able to get access to the data and for our policymakers as well. So in terms of developments for the questionnaire going forward, one of the key areas we've been working on over the last year has been around the area of non-fatal strangulation during consensual sexual activity. This has been a real interest to politicians in Scotland, and there's been a lot of discussions recently about making it a standalone criminal offence. Currently, those types of crimes would be recorded and charged under assault. There's not a lot of information about this and about the nature of this kind of activity and the kind of potential growing problem that this could be. So we've been working over the last year with policymakers, charity organisations, third sector to try and develop a series of questions that we could put into our self-completion module. And that's gone really well. We've actually just finished the cognitive testing on a handful of questions that we are now expecting to put into the 25-26 survey, which will go into the field next month. So these kind of questions will allow us to say not the volumes of these types of crimes, but allow us to say a little bit about the adults who've experienced this kind of activity, whether it was through coercion, whether it's happened more recently, so trying to have a recent measure as well as a lifetime measure, because we'll also ask people whether it's happened over the course of their lifetime, and also what kind of impacts this might have had to them, including physical or mental, emotional issues as a result of that. So like I say, these questions we're planning to put in this year, but as I mentioned earlier, it will go into our self-completion module, which is published every 2 years. So the first findings from these questions would be expected in 2027 at the earliest. A few other changes going in for this year's survey. In addition to the non-fatal strangulation question, we're putting in one question on spiking. This is going to go into a bank of questions around, how common, how much the respondent worries about certain things happening to them. So we're adding in spiking, and this is quite a broad question. It's not just drink spiking, but also we would hope to pick up, cigarette, vape, injection spiking, other kinds of broader bits of, types of spiking, which may happen to an individual. And also around fireworks, there's a lot of work, a lot of interest in fireworks being used sort of in an antisocial behavior context. So we're putting in a question on that also in a similar way about whether this happens in particular times of year. So, is this a common during seasonal celebrations, bonfire night, Halloween, New Year, that sort of thing. So again, these questions will go in this year, but because of where they're going into the survey, we should be able to report on those next year. So the other thing I just wanted to mention is about some wider work. So this is not work that my team is doing, but it's being run by the Office of our Chief Statistician. As Susan mentioned earlier, there's been a fall of engagement in household surveys, not just within Scotland, but also across the world. A few of us met with our New Zealand counterparts a few weeks ago, and that was really interesting. And they've been having similar issues as well on their sort of social surveys. So there's been some additional work being done in government, and if anyone is particularly interested in this, please come and speak to me. Like I say, I can't really speak to this more, but I'm more than happy to put you in contact with the relevant analysts. So there's 2 bits of work. One has been already published, a mixed mode analysis of survey approaches. So this was research exploring whether a mixed mode approach to survey design in the context of Scottish Government population surveys. The report detailed information on key issues and mitigations, trade-offs, and included survey case studies from 21 other surveys. It was really looking to see whether moving the mode of the survey to, say, an online or another would be a feasible approach. So that study was published in December. But there's ongoing research being conducted by Ipsos on the non-response aspect of surveys. So this is with the core aim of understanding reasons for non-response in order to find mitigations for this. The study will draw on behavioral science approaches throughout, both to explore reasons for and develop solutions to this, and will involve a range of different approaches: desk-based analysis of non-response from SG surveys, focus groups with survey leads and field interviewers, and then some research with the general public. And I'm sure members of Ipsos who are here could probably speak to that more if anyone was particularly interested to learn more about it. Sorry, Chris, I'll just drop you right in it. Yeah, so that's really all I wanted to say. If anyone wants to talk about any of this more, please come and find me later on. But yeah, that's us for now. Cheers.